including you.
Well,
The
thanks.
doorbell is off.
Well, thanks for that. Okay. Well, I guess it's time for the intro to this. Hi, family. My name's Jamie, very grateful recovered alcoholic, and welcome to our primary purpose fourth step workshop. And I'm going to do a little something for you before we get started and talk a little bit about why do we do a fourth step. Well, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I came in with a whole bunch of this emotional baggage. So, and it's all the stuff that I drank over. So I like to do this as a little warm up and presentation of why we do a fourth step, because really, aren't we trying to get over the old hurts and pains of life, and not just the resentments, but the hurts and pains that we have given. So this little suitcase, this emotional baggage, I've been carrying around since I have been a little kid. And it starts with our parents. It starts in our homes, our mom and dads, and our siblings and stuff. And there's a whole lot of hurt that goes on, and we just think that is a normal way of life. You got somebody at the door, Trish. And so, you know, then we get involved with other people, right? We have our first love and we get our heart broken, and there's more emotional baggage, and we have mean teachers, and you know, uh if you've ever seen the movie Mean Girls, some of you may have grown up with that, or bullies in school, and it's just all stuff that we carry around. So I've got a few little things here that I'd like to use as an example, because what do we do with our emotional baggage? We drag it from relationship to relationship, and it touches every life that we go throughout our lives. So I've got this picture that that a girl gave me, like when I was 16 years old. Now, I've been married 3 times and been through relationships with lots of other people, yet I'm still hanging on to this little piece of life because it's somehow it's associated with some kind of memory and some kind of pain, maybe a little bit of joy, but mostly the pain. And I struggle with letting go of it. And so then I get involved with her. This happened to have been wife number 3, and it was until death did we part. But, you know, I have been on in other relationships since she went home to be with the good Lord. And, I have to leave her in the past. I don't need to bring her into the present. So I need to learn how to let that go. But how do I do that? I have to do it through an inventory process and grieving. And a lot of the emotional baggage that we've had in our life, we have never properly grieved. So, then we get into things. How do I hate to say it, but how do most of our when we get involved in a relationship, how does it generally start? There's generally some sort of physical attraction to the person, right? Because I don't know a damn thing about them yet. Maybe it's ladies' night and I went out to the bar to buy a lady a few cheap drinks, do a little dancing, go home and fall in bed, and 5 years later wake up and go, who the hell is this person? Who am I? I have no idea, because we fell into lust before we fell into love. And so we go through this, and generally, for a lot of relationships, it's somehow been sexually motivated when we got into it. And when that starts to fall apart and the love life starts to fall apart, we start doing other things that cause us troubles in life, like For some of us men, we might go out and buy some inappropriate magazines at the liquor store that have to have paper bags to walk out. Of course, this one here happens to be Cigar World, because trust me, I'm not going to hold those kind of magazines up. But what my point about that is because things aren't good in the relationship and things aren't good at home, I start looking for things outside of the relationship and outside of the marriage to fulfill me and make me happy. Uh, what is that they call that today? Dopamine, right? I'm looking for the dopamine to replace, to give me that instant feel good. And as the relationship isn't working at home, mentally in my mind, I'm already stepping out on the person. Then we come into the world of technology, right? And, ooh, I can text people I don't even know and have all kinds of inappropriate conversations with them. And, oh, I love you too. And I can start doing all kinds of stuff that is becoming very, very sick emotional behavior on my part. And then we never want to talk about the elephant in the room, which is my alcoholism, right? They may be alcoholic too, but I'm definitely an alcoholic. And what happens when things aren't going my way, when I can't control and manipulate situations to have the outcome that I want? Anger gets introduced in all of this. So, and you say to me, your drinking's getting really bad. You drink too much. And I'm like, no, I don't. Right. So I start emotionally detaching in this relationship instead of looking for the truth about me. And then, as with most things involving anger, and I'll say this about step 4 real quick. Anger is nothing more than aged hurt. Somebody says something, it hurts me, it ages, it becomes anger. The byproduct of the anger is the resentment. The byproduct of the resentment is my acting out in my retaliation. So I come home, maybe I've been out with the guys and had a few too many beers, and you're getting on my case. Kind of like Lois getting on Bill's ass about his drinking disturbed her. So in my anger, I pick up your favorite porcelain doll. Now, this poor little porcelain doll happens to be missing its head because I throw it across the room, or I'm flailing my arms and I'm throwing a temper tantrum to prove to you that I'm right and it's my right to do this. So, got somebody else at the door. What's happening with all of this? Everybody has tried to put me in a box all of my life. My parents tried to put me in a box. My teachers tried to put me in a box. Born and raised religiously, they tried to put me in a box. And what happened was I got to a box that was so full of garbage, and I stuffed all of that deep down inside of me that when I got here, I had a box of emptiness. It was full of garbage, but my spirit was empty in all of that. So what has all of this done? This is my favorite t-shirt, by the way. All of this has brought me to the place that by the time I get to Alcoholics Anonymous, I've got a hole in my soul, right? I've got a hole in my soul. And of course, my favorite way to wear this t-shirt is like this, just because it's an easy slip on. And I'm going through life and I'm lost because I don't know what it's like to interact in a relationship with another person. Alls I know how to do is do my audition for the Jerry Springer show because of my emotional baggage. And all of this stuff fails me. All of this stuff is self-reliance, and it keeps getting worse, and I keep failing to when it finally gets to the point that the depression and the fear and the pain hit, The only thing that I can do is get out the old smelly blanket that I've had since I was a little kid, and it was my place for a retreat. And I wrap myself in that old smelly blanket, and it's familiar. It feels like home. It's comfortable. It's where I live. And when I get depressed, I can just cover myself up and I can hide from all of that stuff. The problem is, most of us have experienced trying to hide from the truth. And, you know, what it has done is it has kept us spiritually sick inside. So, this is why we do a 4-step, so we can be free of all of this emotional baggage that we have carried around for a lifetime. I don't know about the rest of you, but when I got sober, I had 33 years of life, because I got sober at 33. 33 years of life of living in all of that emotional pain. And I drug it from one place to another. And I'll give you one more example of relationships. Actually, I'll give you an example of an Alcoholics Anonymous relationship. AA campus, AA boy meets AA girl. We decide to date, and one day I'm knock, knock, knock on your door because we're going to decide we're going to do something and cohabitate with each other, right? And what happens is I'm like, hi, I'm here. And what do I have with me? My emotional baggage. So I stick it in the closet. I stick it under the bed. Now, you are not any of these people that I have ever been with in my life. But you have this little thing that comes along one day where you do something that reminds me of her. And when it reminds me of her, I open this up and I start re-feeling all of those old thoughts and emotions. And even though you're not her, I start doing little things and making little digs that I'm turning you into her, right? But you're not. You're the person I'm involved with. You're the person that I love, that I care about. But because of old emotional baggage, I'm trying to turn you into that person because I haven't learned how to heal from it. So that's what this meeting is all about, is healing from our emotional baggage. So Trish is going to take the lovely view of my room away, and we're going to start with the slideshow. This meeting is about an hour and a half long presentation, and we will be open for comments, questions, observations, whatever you need to do. And even though we're gonna say this in a little bit, I'm gonna tell you right now, if you need to take a picture of the screen, take a picture of the screen. Just don't take a picture of anybody else. Please feel free to take notes. At the bottom of every slide, there's going to be a number in the bottom right-hand corner. And when we open up for questions, if you want to go back to a slide, we will happily go back to a slide for you and elaborate on that. Hi, Annette. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you, sister. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to let Trish kick it off, and she hasn't introduced herself, but I have a couple of times. Hi, Trish. Welcome.
Jamie, thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm Trish, and I'm an alcoholic. And I am happy to see you all here. And welcome to the Lppbbsg Primary Purpose Big Book Study 4th Step Workshop. That is a mouthful. And you can find past recordings of this same workshop in audio only, just like we're doing tonight, on our website, Lppbbsg.org. And we also have a YouTube channel, and that's written down there on the right-hand side as well. And we record and put this meeting on, as well as our foundations meeting and our Tuesday night big book study, all of which are recorded and posted in audio only, so no faces, just voices.
So let's open this up with the set-aside prayer. And, you know, there's many versions of the set-aside prayer, but this is my favorite version because I'm not assuming power in this. I'm asking God to be the power. So, can you blow that up a little bit, Trish? You can't with that, can you? It doesn't scroll like it does. Okay. Set aside prayer. God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself. The 12 steps, the big book, the meetings, my disease. But most especially, God, please set aside everything I think I know about you so that I may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please let me see the truth. And Trish, we got some revamping to do. Maybe we can take that slide and make it fit the frame later when we go back to work on this.
And our preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. And I've lost my place.
Institution.
Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
Please keep in mind that this is a workshop. We will be discussing some real-life examples of what could be difficult for some. While questions are encouraged for clarification, we do not expect specific discussion to encroach into topics that should be saved for your sponsor or for a one-on-one conversation. Feel free to take notes as we go along. This workshop should not be used as a platform to start sharing your fifth step.
And like Jamie said, please use your notebook to write down the slide number from the lower right-hand corner of each slide. And that way we can take all questions at the end, but you'll know which page to refer us back to if you need more clarification or understanding.
So, I love this slide. Let's talk about our service triangle for just a second. We hear people say all the time, and it's because they read the triangle wrong, unity, service, and recovery. And that's because we have a tendency to read left to right. But truthfully, what we're doing is we're reading from bottom clockwise, right? So, recovery. It's the 12 steps. Recovery is the mind found in the big book from page XXV to page 164. It's a set of 12 spiritual principles that are the 12 steps. Have you continued to actively take the 12-step process outlined in the AA Big Book? Unity, the body, found in the fellowship, set of 12 spiritual principles found in the 12 traditions. Do you have a group that you are committed to? Is your group committed to the 12 steps? And does your group live by the traditions? And of course, service, which is the spirit, found in carrying the message, a set of 12 spiritual principles found in the 12 concepts. This applies from the group level through the service structure all the way to GSO. So that would be your district and your area assembly all the way through it. Are you working with others and taking them through the 12 steps? And since I see some of you here, and I know some of you, I would guess that you are.
So while this is a fourth step workshop, it's always good practice to review the foundation of steps 1, 2, and 3 before beginning. Therefore, we will be reviewing some hotspots to be sure the foundation is intact, leading into step 4.
I got the door. Well, maybe you beat me to it. Through the information we read in the doctor's opinion, along with the first 44 pages, we are given the information we need to self-diagnose our alcoholism. Only 51 pages in all lead us to this decision. This is our step 1.
And step 1 from our book, Alcoholics Anonymous, page 30. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people, or presently may be, has to be smashed.
I love that little bang. And from page 60 of our big book, we're going to take a look at the ABCs, but we're going to take a look at them in a little bit different context. Being convinced. A, am I convinced that I am an alcoholic and that my life is unmanageable? Step 1. B, am I convinced that no human power could have relieved my alcoholism? Still step 1. And C, am I convinced that there is a power greater than my own power that can and will relieve my problem? A and B, step 2.
And referring back to We Agnostics, pages 50 and 51. And this chapter is a pathway of letting go of old ideas and old beliefs, and opening my heart and mind to finding new ideas and new beliefs. And it says, this happened soon after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements. Once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, they show the underlying reasons why they were making heavy going of life. Leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. They show how the change came over them.
So before we move on, some of you may be familiar with pages 60 through 62. But we read it in the first person, and the people that I work with, it is my goal to teach them to read the book in the first person where applicable. Why? Because when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, they told me to find myself in this book. So when I read it in the first person, I'm reading about me instead of reading about them so long ago. And it helps make me part of what the whole story of Alcoholics Anonymous is. So a life based on self-will, read in the first person, from Alcoholics Anonymous's page 60 through 62. If my arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as I wish, the show would be great. Everybody, including me, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, I may be sometimes quite virtuous. I may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, I may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, I am more likely to have varied traits.
What usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. I begin to think life doesn't treat me right. I decide to exert myself more. I become, on the next occasion, still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit me. Admitting I may be somewhat at fault, I am sure that other people are more to blame. I become angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is my basic trouble? Am I not really a self-seeker, even when trying to be kind? Am I not a victim of the delusion that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if only I manage well? Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things I want? And do not my actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? Am I not, even in my best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony?
True that. I am centered, self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. I am like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining about the sad state of the nation. I am like the minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century. I am like politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. I am like the outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him. I am like the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. Whatever my protestations, am I not mostly concerned with myself, my resentments, my self-pity? Selfishness and self-centeredness, that I think is the root of my troubles. driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. I step on the toes of my fellows, and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt me, seemingly without provocation. But I invariably find at some point in the past, I have made decisions based on self, which put me in a placed me in a position to be hurt. Hang on before you move out that slide. So folks, I want to tell you this. All of this comes directly out of the big book, with the exception of in the first person. That's the only part that we have changed, is the way that we read it. So what I'd like to suggest is that maybe as individuals, when you're sitting down with your big book, go back and read it in the first person and see if it doesn't give you a little different perspective. Everything we're going to present to you tonight moving forward will come from the totality of about 7 pages in the big book through the 4-step process. Okay, Trish, thank you.
So our troubles, I think, it should be so my troubles, I think, are
Yes.
basically of my own making. They arise out of ourselves, or myself, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though I usually don't think so. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. I must, or it kills me. God makes that possible. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. Many of us have had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but I could not live up to them even though I would have liked to. Neither could I reduce my self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on my own power. I had to have God's help.
And I just made a note for us to edit that page, Trish, and I can tell you're fixing to do the same thing. Now that the book has given us ideas that our problem is based in self, we need a pathway forward toward finding out what our selfishness, self-centeredness, fears, and delusions are. This comes from the process of the 4-step inventory. The first 3 columns are centered around our resentments and how they affected us. Everything after that looks at our own thoughts, actions, and patterns. This is a discovery process of who we have become.
So first of all, I have to quit playing God. And why? It didn't work.
And that upper right-hand corner will tell you what page all of this stuff is in the book, by the way. So let's take a look at our 3rd step prayer on page 63. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, the victory over them may bear witness to those I would help, of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. So I like to break this down just a little bit here in these couple of areas. In this prayer, where I am asking God to relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do his will, and to take away my difficulties, is it possible that all of those things that we just read from page 60 to 62 are the difficulties and the bondage of self that I'm asking God to relieve me of? It's really interesting to me that you look at our 3rd step prayer is on page 63, but if I look directly across from it at page 62, what do I see? Selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of my troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear and self-delusion, I step on the toes of my fellows and they retaliate, sometimes seemingly without provocation. So all of those things are foundational to what my defects of character are.
And now we're going to take a look at the 3 aspects of a relationship with God, and this comes from page 62. The director and the actor. A director runs the show. The actor listens for directions. On my own, have I failed to provide what I need to be okay? And am I ready to make the decision that hereafter God will direct my life? The principal and the agent. An agent represents who the principal or employer would have them be. Have I failed to be the person that I would have me be? And have I failed to make others who I need them to be? Am I ready to make the decision that hereafter I will represent who God would have me be? And father-child. A child trusts their father can provide what they are incapable of doing on their own. Have I failed in directing my life on my own power? Am I ready to make the decision that hereafter I will trust that God will provide what I need?
So there's a whole lot of workbooks out there, folks. Hazelton puts them out, and several other people, and they are a check the box kind of thing. It asks you questions. Yep, that's me. Yep, that's me. That, but we never bother to discover why it's me. So that's not how the fourth step was meant to be. It was meant to be the big book, a pad, and a pencil, piece of paper. So there are many four-step workbooks available. However, the fourth step was never meant to be a check-the-box inventory. The instructions in the big book always say, referring to our list, which we have written out in detail.
And I always enjoyed the hard-headed buffalo up top because that reminds me how hard-headed I am, or
That,
was.
that particular pad was chosen by design.
Yep. So before I begin, I pray something like this because I always want to make sure I'm involving God in this process. God, please help me see the truth about the things in myself which have been blocking me from you.
So if you look at your big books, you'll see that Bill has a diagram on that page, and it shows 3 columns, but we're going to go through the first 2 columns here. And we are generally as definite as this. First 2 columns, we work each column from top to bottom. First, we list all of the names, and then we list all of the causes. And the reason for us to do that is because if we start going across instead, we start feeling emotional pain and we say, oh, hell no, I'm not doing this. I'm not having any part of it. And we start living in the fear. So we get the list of names down first and then the causes before we move forward. So I'm resentful of Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, my employer, and my wife. And the cause with Mr. Brown, his attention to my wife. Told my wife of my mistress. Well, you know, I'd be a little irritated too if that happened. Not that I have a mistress, but just saying. And Brown may get my job at the office. So obviously some threats there. Mrs. Jones, she's a nut. She snubbed me. She committed her husband for drinking, and he's my friend. She's a gossip. My employer, unreasonable and unjust, overbearing, threatens to fire me for drinking and padding my expense account. And my wife, misunderstands and nags. Likes Brown and wants the house put in her name. And Trisha's going to get to why that's so important in column 3 here.
And just a quick note here. Notice while we're looking at this, because it'll be important in a few slides, I've got 4 people on my list. I've got 11 different resentments. 2 on Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, or 3 on Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, 2 on my employer, and 3 on my wife. So that way later on, I'm going to be looking at each individual resentment, not at each individual person, because that makes it a whole lot different later on when we do it that way. So after I complete columns 1 and 2, that's when I want to add the 3rd column. And again, we're going to work top to bottom, not across. So I've already looked at, let's see, the 3rd column are the 7 areas of self, which begin on page 64. Self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, and pocketbook. I've already written down, Mr. Brown, and what my resentments or what the cause is. What does this affect? This affects my sex relations. This affects my self-esteem. And then in parentheses, there's a lot of fear there with self-esteem. So I'm going to put that little word fear there. And then Mrs. Jones. I've got her name. I've got my resentments or the causes with Mrs. Jones. What does this affect? This affects my personal relationships. This affects my self-esteem. There's that fear again. I'm resentful at my employer. My causes. And then what does this affect? My self-esteem and the fear and my security. And I'm resentful at my wife. I have my resentments listed. This affects my pride, my personal and sex relations, my security, and my fear.
All 3 of those columns are lies, I tell you, lies.
But those are my feelings.
But feelings aren't facts.
No, feelings are not facts. But the feelings are valid, and we need to find out where they come from and then decide what are we going to do with them.
Why do we do an inventory? And this comes from page 65 and 66. We went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. When we were finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was that the world and its people were often quite wrong. To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us had ever got. The usual outcome was that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Sometimes it was remorse and then we were sore at ourselves. But the more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived.
There are people who will look at the chart on page 65, and I was one of them, and say, this is the 4th step. However, there is much more work to do. The full directions start on page 65, but they don't end until page 71. And then page 72 states, we have been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path, the causes and conditions, from page 64. Without these other columns, I am missing most of my discovery process, and the following slides are the rest of this process.
So, from the big book, pages 66 and 67, before each 4th column, which is my defects of character and my patterns, the person I have turned into. In paragraph form, how have I done the things I've resented in column 2, what the cause was, to the person I listed in column 1, who I'm resentful at, and or others. Refer to page 66, paragraph 4. This was our course. We realized that the people who had wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick like ourselves. After considering this realization, say the 4th step prayer, reference page 67, and that is also known as the sick man's prayer. This is a sick person like myself. How can I be helpful to them? Then there's a prayer for me. God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done. Now, here's what I'd like to say about these 2 prayers. While it does not use the word forgiveness, what they do is they instill the seed of forgiveness in my heart. Why? Because it is literally impossible for me to be angry and helpful to someone simultaneously. To truly have the spirit of helpfulness in my heart, if I am angry and upset with them, I might begrudgingly do something for them out of that feeling of obligation, or maybe they're guilting me into it. But when I'm doing it generally from my heart, and I realize that they're spiritually sick like myself, it plants the idea of the seed of forgiveness in my heart. And I can tell you, folks, at the end of the day, every day, forgiveness is my pathway to freedom.
Now here we're going to take a look at worksheets that we have come up with. I'll just go to the next page. On the left is an example of what came of that table that came off of page 65. It lists just 3 resentments we ran out of room: Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, and my employer. And the causes, columns 1 and column 2. The worksheets that we came out with, and we're also able to email them out to you if you're interested. Just put your email in the chat, either to everybody or just send it to just me. That's fine too. Same form, but it's blank and it's not yellow on the background, so it isn't going to kill your ink blotter or your printer ink. But we're just giving you a starting point. We still have on top the prayer to say, God, please let me see the truth. God, help me see the truth about my resentments. And space to do all your writing, your names and the cause, and then we'll get to the next screen, and we'll get to the screen in a minute that shows you what our column 3 looks like.
Stay on that slide for just a second, Trish. I want to explain something else. So here's the reason on that right-hand page why we put all of that in red and blue and black up there in the top for you folks. Because most people are not going to sit there and write all of that out at the top of every page. That's been my experience. Some will. Those who are really desperate to get through this work will. So we took that work out of it for you. And like Trish said, put your email in the chat. We'll be happy to email these out to you. There will be 13 example pages for you, and you can print as many of the other pages as you want or need, because we'll get to that in a second. Because remember where Trish talked about there were 11 resentments on the example page? Well, we do 1 resentment per page. The reason is because I hate him, I hate her, right? And what we've done is we've just bundled all of our collective resentments. Anybody ever cook a pot of spaghetti noodles and not rinse them off properly, and they're all stuck together, and you're trying to dig the noodles out? Well, what we're doing through this process of 1 resentment per page is we're pulling each individual spaghetti noodle out of there, because it becomes easier for us to forgive and let go of the little things. And that way, by the time we get to that big thing, maybe it'll be easier for us to let go of that and heal from it as well. So there again, please put your emails in the chat and we'll send them out to you. Oh, this is my page, huh?
It is.
Okay, the 7 areas of self. The third column focuses on the 7 areas of self. These are found on pages 64 and 65 in the book. Our focus will be on self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, which has nothing to do with the act of sex, folks. It has everything to do with how we interact with our partners in life. And our pocketbook. I ask myself, how do these resentments affect me in these areas of my life? Keep in mind that sex relations has nothing to do with the act of sex here, rather than male, female, in today's world, same-sex couples, or relationship with the partner of our choice. While pride is not listed on these pages, it is included in the 7 deadly sins, which are discussed in the 12 and 12 in step 4 on page 48. It also ties very closely with our self-esteem and gives me a different perspective on looking at myself. The 7 deadly sins from the 12 and 12 are pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, and sloth. And you know, folks, those seem to be the things, if we're honest with ourselves, that either motivate us or dominate us, and we destroy our lives with those things. Um, you know, this is all incredibly important stuff and so simple, but yet we complicate it.
So this is what our third column looks like. It's not quite a column, but I know for me, if I'm taking a piece of paper and I'm marking columns off on it, if I run out of space, I'm just going to say, well, I'm done. I have no more space. I can't write anything else. And then I'm going to try to move on, but it won't be complete that way. In giving column 3 its own page, I have all the space I need to write out everything that I need to write out so that I can be taking my inventory and looking closely at me, all of me, not just bits and pieces. So up in the upper left in the blue writing, just a reminder, we're looking at self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, and pocketbook. And like Jamie said, we're going to use one of these pages for each resentment, not one per person. So if I was working off of that chart that Bill made, by the time I was done, I would have not 4 pages for the 4 people, but I would have 11 of these pages, one for each of the 11 resentments. And what you see here is an example of what the column 3 would look like by using the 7 areas of self and how it should look once you're done. So at the top of the page, I'm going to write, or I'm going to trace over what I've written, what's already written if you're using one of our forms. God, please let me see the truth. And on the right-hand side, the first name is Mr. Brown, and the first resentment is his attention to my wife. Xavier.
Hey, a quick procedural question. Do you just write pride, or not pride, like sex relations, or do you write anything else? Like it gives you all those examples. Do you restrict yourself to those exact examples and you just write those exact words if it applies? Or do you put the story behind it?
Also put
Or do
the
you say
story
that?
behind it.
So, okay. So then column 2, did you put the story as well?
In column 2, I just listed what the resentment was. And then I put in how it affects me. But as I'm writing what it affects in this form, we're including how does it affect me?
So
Not
for
just
example, sex relations. So you would have the resentment in column 2 and column 3 would say sex relations and just write out like whatever you need to, how it affects you, how it applies.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So we're looking at the affects mine. And remember, we're going to keep columns 1 and 2 in mind while writing column 3. And like we said in the beginning, from page 65, paragraph 3, it says, we considered it carefully. So I want to take some time and really consider, pray and meditate and contemplate what it is that I'm writing here. I want to look at the third column and consider what sentence I write, but I also want to look at the opposite of each sentence. So then when I'm done, I can also let the inventory reveal my fears behind each of the 7 areas of self. And the fears, I'm going to leave a spot on the right-hand page to write, what are the fears that go along with the self-esteem? What are the fears that go along with the pride? So starting out with self-esteem, and we define that as how do I see or how do I feel about myself? What role have I assigned myself in this relationship? Or what role have I assigned myself as far as this resentment is concerned? And the sentences are usually going to start with I am. So an example would be, I'm the best breadwinner she could have. Or it could be, I'm the worst breadwinner, or I'm the best husband she could have, or I could be the worst breadwinner that there is. How am I being affected, my self-esteem, with my resentment against his attention to my wife? Moving on to pride. Pride is how I think others see me or how I think others feel about me. What's the role that I have assigned myself in other people's lives? And the sentences might start with others should, or maybe others should not. For example, others should not pay so much attention to my wife. And then I'm going to look at the fears behind that self-esteem. If I'm the best husband she could have, I'm the worst breadwinner there is. It could be the fear of not being good enough, or the fear of somebody is stealing my wife or my husband. And the pride, the example, others should not pay so much attention to my wife, could be the fear of being alone or the fear of abandonment.
Hang on before you move from that slide, Trish. I just want to say something about this page. And if you look at page 65 in the diagram that Bill has given us and the third column, you'll see in parentheses the word fear. So what we're giving you is a pathway here. Many people will just say, oh, it's pride, or they'll say whatever it is, but they never actually get into defining it. Like here, we're defining what the fear is with self-esteem. I have a fear that I am not good enough. I have a fear that if someone's paying attention to my wife, my marriage is threatened, right? So we start defining those fears because go back to the screen share for just a second, Trish. We normally do this later, but and we will in the fear inventory, but it's kind of important to bring out now. So we never really, we just write it off to it's this or that. But we blanket fear in our lives over everything. Oh, that's fear over here, and that's fear over there. And it's like a fog. And what happens is we become so paralyzed by our fears that we wrap them around ourselves and we completely hide in them, and we become paralyzed from moving forward. So while we will get deeper into fears later, this becomes the foundation of how we start to define what those fears are. If I'm an asshole, guess what? My wife is going to say, you know what? Get the hell out. I don't want you being this example. I don't want you being this person around me or our children or whatever. Oh, I'm going to be homeless. That's a valid fear. I'm going to have to pay a lot of money for a divorce and a lot of child support and alimony and all of that. Natural fears. So we start defining what those fears are because they're true and they're genuine. Okay, Trish, sorry. Oh, now it's my slide. As soon as you get back to them. So moving along in the 7 areas of self, my ambition, what do I want to happen here? And examples start, for example, I want a healthy, happy relationship. Or I want to be left alone, damn it. And I'm sure all of us have been in relationships like that. We either want to be Klingons or we want to be totally left alone so that we can do all of our own stuff. What's the fear associated with that of being alone and losing everything? Security. What do I need to be okay? Sentences start with I need blank to be okay. Example, I need my wife to love and respect me. I need Brown to respect my marriage. The fears associated with that is being disrespected or being unlovable. Personal relationships, my deep-seated beliefs of how this relationship should look. Example, wives trust their husbands. Friends should respect me, my marriage, my family. Identify the fear, not being accepted, not being respected. And I'm going to stay on personal relationships for just a second. If we all look back at our history and our childhood, where do we get our first example of what relationships are supposed to look like with your partner? Mom and dad, aunt and uncle, grandma and grandpa, right? That's where we get the first impressions of that. And so we carry those things with us in our future. If we see our father disrespecting our mother and, throwing things at her and cussing her out, that's a pretty unhealthy example of how to be in what should be a kind and loving relationship. So this is a really, really important thing to look at in our lives and to see if maybe we have been that way as well. Sex relations, my deep-seated beliefs and how real men and women are supposed to be. Sentences start with a real man and or woman is, example, real men don't pursue other men's wives, right? I made a commitment to my wife, right? For all those things, till death do we part. So if I'm pursuing somebody else, I'm not living up to what I committed to. And there's no judgment in any of this, folks. It's just a discovery process of where I took a wrong turn somewhere. So we identify the fear there. Abandonment may be one of them. And here again, this is your inventory. I have people ask me all the time, well, what should I write? It's not my inventory to write. It's not my life. It's not my story. It's yours. But all of this should be giving you a pathway to find this. And again, sex relationships. Where do we first get our first examples of that? We get it with mom and dad, with grandma and grandpa, aunts and uncles, older siblings that are married, and so on. And let's face it, we've had some bad examples throughout our lives. And other times we've had good, healthy examples. And then we get down to pocketbook. Affects my finances. Sentences start with no one should or shouldn't. Examples, others should not go into my wallet without my permission. No one should go into my phone without my permission. Brown should not ask my wife to dinner and then ask her to pay for it. What are the fears associated with that? Financial insecurity? My wife used to tell me, go get this out of my purse for her. And what I would do is I'd go get her purse and bring it to her. Why? Because what's going on in her purse is none of my damn business, right? And that I consider that to be a personal state. And I might see something like a phone number from a truck driver that she's been friends with for 30 years, and all of a sudden I'm angry because she has this friendship. We're all human. We all have a past. We all have relationships. There's a reason we brought phones into this today. Because how many of us do banking on our phones? How many of us purchase things through app and Amazon and use Venmo and PayPal and all of that stuff? So if somebody gets into my phone and decides to Venmo $500 to themselves out of my checking account, that is going to affect my financial security. So there are reasonable things to keep those things protected. And this is also where trust is built in relationships. If I do honorable things, I will have honorable things happen in my relationship. I had a friend who used to say, if you want to stop feeling shitty, stop doing the shitty little things that you do. He was absolutely right. And what he was talking about was this pathway leading us to healing. Okay, Trish.
And again, on the left hand, you see the yellow page of example that we just went over as the example page in our packet that we could send out. And the blank page. This affects my self-esteem. This affects my pride. I'm resentful at, because. In the column for fear, it's blanks for you to fill that one in. And if you decide to use these forms, please print off as many as you need. We're not going to say, no, you can only print off one, you can only print off two. We give these out to you after we send these out to you so that once we've gone over the workshop with you and you've seen how we filled them out, you have them to help. And we're both always available if you have questions and you want to call us and say, I don't get it. we can jump back in Zoom with you, either both of us or one of us, just to go over any questions that you have while you're filling them out.
Hang on 1 second before you change the page, Trish.
Okie dokie.
Okay, I just put my phone number in the chat, folks, and Trish will do the same. Okay, now you can change the page. Thank you. So, our fourth column worksheet. This is where I discover my defects of character and shortcomings. The directions start on page 67 in paragraph 2 in the big book. Use 1 page per individual. Resolutely look for the harms that I have done to others. Where was I to blame? This will be the foundation for my 8-step list. The form may need to be modified for institutions. I continue to recognize my own fears. The direction for the fear inventory is found on page 68, actually from page 67 to 68. But before you move on from this slide, folks, a lot of times we've done harms to other innocent people. I'm just going to throw that out there. That had nothing to do with what was going on in our lives, but we lashed out and we caused harm. So some of these harms may not have anything to do with the resentment. It may have to do with the resentment. And we get to step 8 and it says, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. But that list starts in the 4-step process. Okay.
So this is what our fourth column is going to look like. Again, if we send it to you, you'll have this as an example. You'll also have a blank white one for you to fill in as you need to. And this is an example of what the fourth column would look like when it's completed. And keep in mind, it can be written in phrases. It doesn't have to be full sentences. You're not turning it in for a grade and you're not writing the great American novel. But just put enough in there so that when you do follow up the 4th step with the 5th step, there's enough information there so that you know what the background of the story that you wrote down is, so that you have it for a conversation later. And again, at the top of every page, we're going to invite God into the process. God, please let me see the truth. And the realization here is, how have I done the things I've resented in column 2 to the person that I've listed in column 2, in column 1, or others? Or this is my retaliation or my get even part. And I've got this list of resentments you did to me, but now I'm starting to look at me. How often did I do those same things back to you or to somebody else? So the first one is, where had I been self-seeking? And the self-seeking is the actions. And I want to look around the whole resentment. What did I do? Where was I to blame? My selfish actions or activities were what? Who did I affect? And who else did I pull into this drama? And when I say, who else did I pull into this drama? How many times have I called up my girlfriend and said, do you know what my husband did to me today? Do you know what he said? Do you understand what this means? She had nothing to do with it. But I'm pulling her in because I want her to pat me on the head, make me feel better, and say, yeah, girl, you were 100% right. He was 100% wrong. And then when I looked down at it, I had no business pulling her in. And as it turns out, I'm the one who was wrong, not him. So I've got to watch how many people I pull into these things, these resentments that I have on somebody else, just to get on my side and be my cheerleaders to say, yeah, hold that resentment, because that doesn't do me any good. So what did I do? I placed blame. I acted out. I called your boss to tattle. He's drunk again. He's not really sick. He's drunk again. I said I was going out with friends, but the reality is I was going out to get laid. I'm just lying to you. And then selfish. What was my selfish thinking? First I do the act, then first I look at the actions. Now I'm looking at my thinking. What was my selfish thinking while I was doing those above or self-seeking actions? My selfish attitudes were what? I demanded to get my own way. I was filling out divorce papers in my mind while we were in bed together. I had it all planned out. You were going to pay and I was going to cut you off.
I got a question because I'm going to look at all your screens when I ask this question. Any of these behaviors remind you of the Jerry Springer show or watching Maury Povich or any of those shows that are all about the drama and all of that, you know? And when Trish was talking about dragging her girlfriend into it, yeah, you're going to come to Jerry Springer with me and you're going to be my witness. And then what happens? You find out, oh, you've been having an affair with my husband. So now we're in a fist fight over that. And this is the drama of life, right? Maybe some of us have experienced it, maybe some of it. So continuing on with my fourth column and looking at me, and all of these things are listed as actual questions in the book. Where had I been dishonest? What were the lies I was telling myself that resulted in the selfish thinking above? Where was I in delusion? I could find someone else better. You would never be good enough. You didn't care about me or our family. And where was I afraid? What are the fears that drive the delusions above? So one column, it's kind of like the steps. One column is a discovery process that leads us to the next one. Where was I afraid? I would be alone, even though I didn't want you. The children wouldn't have their other parent. I wouldn't be able to pay the bills, and we would be homeless. I feared for my safety or retaliation. Some of us have been in some of those sick relationships where, you know, is he or she gonna walk in the door tonight and start throwing things around and start threatening me with bodily harm? The above fears drive the dishonesty that result in the selfish attitude behind the self-seeking actions.
Then I need to consider if there are any other fears that should be placed on the fear list. And like Jamie said, sometimes there's fears that aren't directly related to one of the resentments that I have, but there's just fears that I know I have in my life. And I want to look at every fear and consider the opposite. And if it applies, add it to the list. Don't just look for the negative, look for the positive as well. And in these examples, we have them listed either or, but they're not necessarily an either or. The word or there is just to separate one side and the other side. So I fear being alone, or also, I'm also have a fear of meeting another abusive partner. I fear being homeless, but I also fear having to move back in with my parents. I fear losing my job for the lies I told while I was out. I fear my truth. I also fear being successful. And I fear having too many friends. Then I need to look at the harms. What are the harms that I have caused to other people? And I need to look around the entire resentment, my parents, my friends, my employers, my employees, if that applies. Innocent bystanders, which we talked about a little bit, the people I complain to who have absolutely nothing to do with the situation. I may have harmed them by dragging them into something they have nothing to do with. I've harmed my wife, my spouse, and my children with my lies. I've harmed my boss and my coworkers by not showing up for work. I've harmed my relationship with other family members. I've harmed my credit and financial status due to my selfish actions, and that can carry over into a harm to my spouse and family as well. I've harmed friendships by complaining about my spouse to them.
So the fear inventory. Read the big book from page 67, third paragraph. Notice the word fear. To page 68, third paragraph, to outgrow fear. List all the fears and make a graph. I believe in the book it talks about fears being bracketed. so the sports nuts will get that. But make a graph and of columns, or use the fear inventory template. We have one of those. We will focus on the first column, then we will look at each row individually. Take all of the fears you've wrote in your inventory and make one single list in the first column. List each different fear only once in the first column. We ask ourselves, why do I have this fear? Look around each fear. The next slide will show you the trail of fears by looking at the fears hidden behind each fear or another fear. Reference page 68. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We ask ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Hang on before you move on from that slide, Trish. So, anybody ever have a fear of not being good enough at their job and that they were going to get fired? Anybody get a promotion in their job and have a fear of being successful, and maybe that pride and ego creeps in because that is driven by fear? Well, I'm the boss now, I get to tell these people what to do. All of those things are fear that are based, that are real in our lives, and they hinder us from moving forward. Go ahead, I got this.
So, an example of the trail of underlying fears. One of the fears we recognized as we were looking at that column 3, when we were looking at our causes. I fear not being good enough. What's the fear behind that? If I'm not good enough, I fear I'm going to be unwanted. So let's look at B. I fear being unwanted. What's the fear behind that? What's hiding underneath? If I'm unwanted, I fear I'm going to be alone. I fear being alone, but what's underneath that? Because I fear the emotional pain of being alone. I fear sitting in that emotional pain because I'm afraid if I sit in it long enough, I'm going to drink again. I fear drinking again because for me, to drink is to die. I fear dying because I fear the unknown and I don't know what dying means. And I fear the unknown because I fear there is no God. And I fear there is no God, so I repeatedly trust self-reliance, even though I fear self-reliance has failed. All of these fears, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, are all wrapped up or hidden under not being good enough. I'm going to go on to the next slide, and then, whoop, at the bottom. But wasn't I trying to kill myself anyway? And is this the alcoholic insanity we live in? And is this how I'm supposed to drink, to think that drink through? And am I setting myself up for a drink when I'm drowning in or being paralyzed by my fear? And that this next page is the same thing we were looking at. It's just in the format that we've made. It's just rows and columns. So in that first row, or in that first column, I'm going to write down every single fear that I've identified to this point, that I've written either at the beginning in that right-hand corner, right-hand column, or when we were looking at the fears between the selfishness, the self-seeking, the fears. So I fear being afraid. Or I fear not being good enough. And what's the fear behind that? The fear of being unwanted. What's the fear behind that? The fear of being alone. And we're just going to look at it in a different format, all the way down to, I fear there is no God. And this is one example of the trail of fears. Each one of us needs to follow our own trail. My trail might be different than yours. So like Jamie said, when I'm working with somebody else and they're saying, what do I write here? I don't know. It's like, I don't know. It's not my inventory. It's your inventory. I might make a few suggestions, but I'm not going to make them with the intent of that person writing down every single thing that I say, because then they're writing down my inventory, not theirs. And in our example further on, we're going to look at some repeated fears. and which is just going to show us another pattern in our lives and in our inventory.
Ah, I love this page. The sex inventory and the sex ideal, which come to us from pages 68 and 69. Now about sex. Many of us needed an overhauling there, but above all, we tried to be sensible on this question. It is easy to get way off track. Here we find human opinions running to extremes. Absurd extremes, perhaps. One set of voices cries that sex is the lust of our lower nature and a basic necessity of procreation. Then we have the voices that cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think we do not have enough of it, or it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. One school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet. We want to stay out of this controversy. We do not wish to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. What can we do about them? We reviewed our own conduct over the past years. Where had we been selfish? These are questions. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? We got all this down on paper and looked at it.
The sex inventory and sex ideal instructions from our book on pages 68 and 69. And the following are the directions for the sex inventory in question form, taken right out of the book. And again, we always ask God at the beginning of the page to show us what we need to see before we get started. So number 1, read the big book from page 68, the 4th paragraph, where it says now about sex, all the way to page 70, the 2nd paragraph, where it ends with would bring heartache. And then pray. Make a list of all the relationships in my life. Number 3, determine what can be done. Write a brief history of each relationship, including motives for getting involved, specific sex conduct, major points in the relationship, and how the relationship ended or how it is now.
I review my conduct, look at each relationship, and answer the following questions. There are 9 questions here, folks, and they're all in the book. We've just here again, we do this in slides because we're such visual creatures and it helps us to understand. So we ask ourselves, where had I been selfish? Where had I been dishonest? Where had I been inconsiderate? Whom did I hurt, including those we brought into our drama, including the innocent bystanders, our children, and so on? Did I arouse jealousy? Did I arouse suspicion? Did I arouse bitterness? Where was I at fault? And this question is really important. What should I have done instead? The answer to the last question, is never, I shouldn't have gotten involved, because I can't change the past. I did get involved and it has now become an experience of my life. Refer instead to what should I have done or how should I have behaved in the relationship. Make sure you are especially complete with this answer, since it will be used later in writing my sex ideal.
And writing my sex ideal from pages 69 and 70. In this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mold our ideals and to help us live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised and loathed. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in so doing. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it. God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with persons is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice.
Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does that mean we are going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but that is only a half-truth. It depends on us and our motives. If we are sorry for what we have done, and we have an honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven, and we have learned our lesson. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are sure to drink. We are not theorizing. These are the facts of our experience. To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for the guidance in each questionable situation, for the sanity and strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge when to yield would mean heartache. The reading continues through the end of the chapter on page 71, encouraging us to review our work and then move forward towards amends. This also encourages us to continue to align ourselves with God so that He can remove whatever self-will has blocked me off from Him.
Now, the following slides are a real working example of a fourth step inventory. It follows the first person in column 1 all the way from first resentment through all 4 columns, discovery along the trail of fears, and ending with the sex inventory and sex ideal. And this takes us through the entire inventory process, starting on page 65 to the end of page 71, and completes step 4 on this one resentment.
So before we get into this resentment, I want to tell you folks, while Bill gives us the hypotheticals on page 5 or 65, we thought it was important to bring in a real life resentment into this. Why? Because it is relatable. Some of these situations, while some of this might be a little uncomfortable, happen to us in real life. And yes, ladies, some of this stuff happens to us men too. It is certainly not gender specific. So that's why we thought it was important to do it. And here again, this is 1 page per resentment, right? So column 1 and 2, make a list of all resentments, then each resentment for each person. So this was Dad. And the cause: he abandoned our family and left us with nothing and nowhere to go. Use the following pages to continue with 1 page per resentment. Multiple resentments would mean multiple pages. So I'm going to give you an example of that. If you got mommy issues or daddy issues, and you have 5 resentments against mommy or daddy, it's going to be 5 pages, 1 resentment per page. And there again, that's just pulling the spaghetti noodles out one at a time. So it's not this big ball of emotional stuff.
So column 3, looking at the self-esteem, the pride, the ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, and pocketbook from page 64. I am resentful at my father. I'm resentful at him because he abandoned our family and left us with nothing and nowhere to go. This affects my self-esteem. I'm not good enough for him to stick around. He loved my brother more. And the fears related to that, not being good enough, being alone, and abandonment. This affects my pride. No father should be angry or violent to a 3-year-old. Fathers shouldn't leave their sons. And the fears, anger, violence, being unlovable, abandonment.
And here again, folks, some of you may never have experienced any of this, but some of you may have. And if you have, this is certainly a pathway. So continuing on and still looking at the 7 areas of self, this affects my ambition. What do I want here? I want my dad back. I want to be loved by my dad. I want my dad to be a role model. The fear associated with that. Fear of abandonment, not having a good, strong role model and a father presence in my life. This affects my security. I need to feel safe to be okay. I need to feel loved to be okay. I need to have shelter and food to be okay. The fears associated with that is maybe becoming homeless, hungry, being hurt, alone, emotional pain, or even being unlovable. Anybody ever experience this thing where being told by a parent, well, you were a mistake, you never should have happened? Isn't that an example of being unloved? My affects my personal relationships. Real men don't leave their families. Real men support their families. So fear associated with that, being alone, not knowing how to treat others. This affects my sex relationships. And like I said earlier, our parents are our first examples of how we interact with our significant others. Real men don't bring strange people into their homes to have sex with their families and then leave to go have sex somewhere else. The fears associated with that, abandonment, sexual abuse, molestation, not being safe, fear of not knowing what a healthy relationship is. This affects my pocketbooks. Others should not threaten my home, food, utilities, finances, etc. The fear associated with that. Homelessness, abandonment, going hungry, not being able to pay my bills. Like I said, folks, some of this might be a little uncomfortable, but the truth is that some of us have lived through some of this stuff. And unless we can recognize it and recognize where those fears and the truth about them, we never get to this place where we heal and where we live in freedom. And that's the goal of this whole process, is to heal and not have to live in that emotional baggage anymore and be free from it. Forgiving others does not absolve anyone of the harms that they did. But what it does is it allows me to live free from their offenses.
And now moving on to the 4th column. And now I'm starting to look at me. The first 3 columns, I'm still looking at them, but now I'm starting to look at me, and I'm looking at finding my patterns, my defects of character, and my shortcomings. And at the top of the page, I have that prayer, God, please let me see the truth. And it's on the examples in our worksheets. You can write it, you can pray it, you can write over it, but just a reminder to bring God into the process. And this is the realization, did I repeat or develop the same behaviors that I resented in column 2 to the person that I listed in column 1 or to others? Where had I been self-seeking? I acted out to get my own way. I put unreasonable demands on my father, my mother, and other family members. I knew emotional drama would always get me attention. I blamed you for my problems. Where had I been selfish? I didn't care what others had to sacrifice to please me. I constantly demanded attention. When I didn't get the attention, I accused others of not loving me. Where had I been dishonest? I would always tell lies. I would steal. If I got in trouble, I would blame other people. I had been so dishonest for so long that I couldn't see what my real truth was. And the biggest tragedy I see now is I was lying to me.
I can tell you this is a factual list. Where had I been afraid? I was afraid of being caught in my lies. I was afraid that I wouldn't be loved because of my lies. I was afraid that I would always be alone and not wanted by anyone. The above fears drive the delusions that result in the attitude behind the actions. Consider if there are any other fears that should be on the fear list. Consider the opposites of each fear as well, if it applies, and add it to the list. And here again, we have and/or situations. I had a fear of abandonment or fear of staying in a toxic relationship, fear of being alone or filling my life with the wrong people, fear of too many people in my life, or fear of being invisible to others, fear of staying in a bad relationship, or of not being financially stable enough to do this on my own.
And again, those ors isn't a pick one. They might both apply. They're just in there as a separation of here's one fear, here's another fear, but they're related. And in some cases, both of them apply to me. So now we're back to that, our trail of fears. And all the way down that first column, I have listed all of the fears that we have found so far. The fear of not being good enough, the fear of being alone, abandonment, anger, violence towards me, going hungry, being unlovable, not having a role model, being homeless. And you know, we've come up on this one, we've got 2 full pages of them. I'm not reading all of them. They're there for an example for you to look at.
Use your mouse, though, to point those out, Trish.
I will, when I get to there.
Okay.
And going along the top row now, after we've gone down the first column, just like we had in the first example, not being good enough. Why do I have this fear? Underneath the fear of not being good enough is the fear of being unwanted. Why do I fear being unwanted? Because if I'm unwanted, I fear being alone. Why do I fear being alone? Because I fear that emotional pain that comes with being alone. And then I fear sitting in that emotional pain. And why do I fear sitting in that emotional pain? Because I'm going to drink again. And why do I fear drinking again? Because that's going to lead me right back to death or insanity. And why do I fear the death and the insanity? Because I fear the unknown. And I fear the unknown because I fear there is no God. Can't really go any further than that. So I'm going to drop down one to the next row. And I have the fear of being alone. But if I look in this top row, I've got being alone right. Oh, no, wrong way. I've got being alone in the first row in the third column. So these X's here just simply mean being alone repeats. I have it here and I have it here. So I stop. I don't have to follow this any further because I've already followed being alone all the way through. So then I'm going to come down. The fear of abandonment. Why do I have the fear of abandonment? Because I fear being alone. I don't like myself. I don't like my own company. And now I'm going to start scratching my head and saying, wait, I've had 3 fears, the fear of not being good enough, being alone, and the fear of abandonment. They have all brought me to the fear of being alone. And if in my 4th step, I'm supposed to be looking for patterns that I see, I'm going to say at this point, since it's come up 3 times, that's a pattern. So when I start discussing this with my sponsor, that's something I need to bring up. This is a big fear for me, the fear of being alone. And then we can discuss why it's a fear and why I don't like being by myself. Dropping down one more, the fear of anger. Why am I afraid of anger? Because it's an unpredictable emotion. And the fear behind that unpredictability is I don't know what I'm capable of. And the fear of that, once I find out what I'm capable of, is that's going to bring me emotional pain. And here I have another duplicate, the emotional pain now in the first row and in the 4th row. And I'm going to follow each one of my fears all the way across. And I'm going to start recognizing. Right now, I've got 5 fears. 2 of them have repeated. The fear of being alone and now the fear of the emotional pain. So when I come down, the very first time I did my 4th step this way, I probably had about a 2-page list of the fears, just like in this example. But when I got to the end of each row, and I got to what started repeating, I end up with mainly five big fears. So when I'm sitting in that fear and I know it's the fear and I've got that knot in my stomach, if I'm sitting at work, I can't do a full inventory. But if there's something going on at work, I can take a quick think of, I know what these what my main 5 fears are, which one applies. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be one of them. And once I recognize what that big fear is, then I can, lunchtime or when I get home, take a little bit of time to do some writing on what that big fear is, why it was popping up today, and where's it going to bring me? And was I relying on me or was I relying on God? Because most of the time when I'm living in these fears and I'm getting that fear paralysis, I'm back in self-reliance, not in God reliance. Your turn.
Okay, thank you very much for doing those pages because you do them so well. And here again, this is a real life example of a sex inventory. This inventory is based on a list made from the history of relationships from page 69. This is not a continuing work of column 1. This is an inventory of our own conduct in our relationships and not based in resentment. So, again, God, please help me see the truth about my conduct in relationships. And we have this worksheet available as well. Write a brief history of the relationships. What were my motives for getting involved? He or she sure was cute. He or she sure was friendly. His or her smile made me melt, sucked me in. My specific conduct in the relationship has been. My specific conduct was totally self-seeking so that I could feel better than myself. Others commented on how cute or my boyfriend or girlfriend is. You know, folks, think about this for just a second. Don't we often look towards other people to give us some validation of who we are and our own self-esteem? You know, aren't we trying to feel good about ourselves because of how others feel about us? But, you know, that can turn on us. Anybody ever been in a relationship with a narcissist? A narcissist will gaslight you, draw you in with kindness, and then dish out plenty of cruelty. And that's kind of an example of what this is.
The major points that came up in the relationship are, I don't play well with others. I always want my own way, and it's usually always sexually motivated. I want control of every situation, whether it's a sexual situation or not. I would do whatever it took to keep you from leaving me. We would fight over spending time with my family at the holidays. Religion and politics would often lead to more fighting and sometimes to more beatings. How did it end? Or how is it now? I walked away in anger because you didn't do what I wanted. Or I acted like a jerk so that you would leave. That way I'm not the bad guy and I can drag all these other people in and they can pat me on their shoulder and saying, oh, you poor thing, because you left me. But the reality is the relationship on both of our parts was so sick and toxic that leaving ended up as to be a means of survival. And one note on this, after the process of taking the steps and making amends, some of these relationships do heal and become healthy friendships. But even if they don't, the important part is that I've taken a look at me and taken responsibility for my part.
Hang on before you move from that slide, Trish. Anybody who's ever been married or is married, if they honestly look at just those 2 things, has probably experienced every one of those things and behaviors at one time or another. And I can tell you that it's true of in the footnote of after we make the amends, and I'm going to share a little story with you. I had an ex-fiance from 40 plus years ago. We were just young kids. A lot of hurtful stuff happened in that relationship. Several years ago, we got in contact with each other. We both made our amends and we healed together through that. And I had been sober many years. And because of the relationship that I have built with God through the process of the program, that individual found a relationship with God. Last year, last year, early November, the good Lord took her home from cancer, but she was at peace. And the beautiful thing about the relationship between us, and we've become the best of friends, was there was no unfinished business between us. And that's the beauty of this whole process that allows us to heal. Okay, go ahead, Trish. Just thought I'd share that. Oh, this is my page. See, I derail myself all the time. I'm like a fast-moving train. So here again, continued. And these are those 9 questions again. Look at each relationship and answer the 9 questions. Refer to page 69. Where had I been selfish, concerned only with myself? I wanted sex all the time, or I never wanted sex. I was demanding. When I didn't want sex, I pushed you away or rejected you. Or maybe I demanded unhealthy or unreasonable sex. Where had I been dishonest, deceptive, and fraudulent? I said you were the only one, but you weren't. I said I was going to work early, but I stopped by to see my girlfriend first. Where had I been inconsiderate, disregard for others? I did not consider your feelings. I did not consider your plans when I decided to stay late at work, and instead went to see my girlfriend. And there again, your examples in your life might not be that ridiculous. On the other hand, they might, or might even be more extreme.
Number 4, who did I hurt? Look around the relationship. I hurt my spouse. I hurt our children. I hurt my boyfriend's children. I hurt extended family members. I hurt my relationships at work when they caught me in my lies. How did I arouse jealousy? I constantly flirted with others in front of my husband. I flirted with my friends' husbands in front of them. How did I arouse suspicions? How did I make you doubt my honesty? I lied about where I was going to be and when I would be home. I would constantly take phone calls and texts when I was home, but I wouldn't let you know who they were from or what they were about. I'd go in the other room so I could respond in secret. I would call you from his house with his parrot squawking in the background, but I couldn't figure out how you always knew I was there. That's that true story.
Quack, quack, quack.
How did I arouse bitterness, deep resentment? I left our family gatherings to see his family instead. I paid his rent and neglected our family. I lashed out in anger, always defensive. But he needs me. And where was I at fault? I put my family second to his family and to their needs.
I love this question. What should I have done instead? Do not write, not gotten involved in the first place. What should my behavior in the relationship, what should it have been? Make sure you are especially explicit about question number 9. You will refer back to this when writing your sex ideal. Refer to page 69. I should have put my family first. I should have been honorable and faithful, financially and emotionally supportive to my family. I should have been kind, loving, and tolerant. I should have taken care of others' needs before mine. I should have prayed and asked for God's help. And the harms. Write any specific harm that comes to you while writing. The realization that I caused deep emotional wounds in my family that may never be repaired. Many of the things I did could be considered abusive and narcissistic. In my experience, I have caused unknown harms, sometimes irreversible damage to the lives of others. And I'm just going to touch on this real quick. My first wife and I, we were a young family and we got broken early on because of my own behaviors. And in my own behaviors, what happened is we ended up in divorce and my wife took my child out of state. I didn't have any contact with my child for 32 years, and when I was 18 years sober, I finally found her. I, to the best of my ability, have made my amends, and she's been in my life for about 17 years now. But she has not healed yet. That is between her and God. And it is my responsibility to be the best example that I can be to her today. But that's her journey. And the reason that I say that is because we often look at our amends with our families and say they'll never be complete, and that's not true. Once we have made our amends, afterwards, it becomes 12-step work by the way we live our life as an example. And we treat them with kindness and love. And a prayer. God, I ask that you help mold what the ideal relationship should be in my life, that I may be able to live by that ideal and be able to live in a healthy relationship with others. Amen. Almost done, folks.
Now that we have followed the instructions and taken a look at ourselves and our conduct, let us now turn to page 69, paragraphs 3 and 4, and refer to the instructions in finding our sex ideal. In this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mold our ideals and to help us live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in so doing. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it.
There are 12 steps and 12 traditions for recovery. There are 11 chapters in our book. Is it possible that the chapter 12 in your big book will be your story? So how will it read? Finding yourself through this inventory could be the beginning of your chapter 12. It is now up to you to write your own chapter 12.
And a quick fifth step note. The bottom of page 74 to the top of page 75 gives us the directions of how to choose who is to hear our fifth step. Its suggestion is that we choose someone that will keep our confidentiality. This could be a priest, minister, rabbi, or a counselor, people who are bound to confidentiality by law. However, experience has taught us of the value of taking this step with another alcoholic, sponsorship. We believe the advantage to this is that the experience of another alcoholic knows where to direct us next through the process of recovery. We recommend that you prayerfully ask God to bring the right person into our lives to help us through this process.
We hope that you will continue to join us for our bi-monthly workshop, as this work is only a beginning into the truth about ourselves. It is our experience that when people return month after month with new questions, we all grow in effectiveness and understanding. We continue to ask God to mold us into the people He would have us be, so that we can help others to find theirs in their truth. Yours in service with love, Lppbbsg. And now we are open for questions, comments, observations. We'd love to hear from you. If there's any slides you want to go back to, any thoughts, please feel free to raise your hand and share or unmute or whatever. We're pretty lax around here. It's a dental chair, Trish.
Don't all jump in at once.
And again, if you didn't put your email in the chat and you would like our sheets, by all means, please do that. Tim, I was supposed to send them to you the other day and I didn't. But drop your email in the chat and Trish will take care of them all at once.
See you guys later.
Thanks, LaDonna. Good to see
Donna,
you,
thanks.
sister.
Thank you.
Listen, thank you so much for this.
You are welcome.
I do like to, when is your what is the date for the bi-monthly meeting?
So the next 4-step workshop, let me get to my calendar. The next 4-step workshop will be on October 5th. And in September, on September 7th, we will have a foundations meeting, which is a different meeting. It takes us about 45 minutes to present it, and it is a journey through the book, and we hit several hot spots in the book, which is really good for newcomers and for those of us that work with newcomers to take them to these hot spots and help them understand alcoholism.
Okay, thank you. I've been at this a long, over 5 years. But there have been a lot of struggles.
Well, we are happy to help out. And Trisha's
Y'all are very helpful.
Thank you. Trisha's number is in the chat, and so is mine. So please feel free to write it down and contact me anytime.
And when I get the email sent out, I'll also have both of our emails and phone numbers in there. So if you need to follow up with either one of us, any questions, want to jump on Zoom with one of us, both of us, bring a friend with you, we're happy to do that too.
Even bring a frenemy. We like frenemies too.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
I want
Tim,
to thank you very much. Thank you, Jimmy.
thank you, Annette. Glad to have.
Sorry I couldn't be on camera most of the time, but I'm home. I just got off work and I want to be listening, and I got the animals to tend to, and so. But I was on, and it's just real good stuff. Good stuff.
Good. Glad to have you with us, my friend. You remember Rick, and Rick is the one who gave us this in the beginning and the foundation of it. And Trish and I have spent a few hundred hours putting all the rest of it together. So it's worked out well.
Not with us anymore, but yes, I remember him.
Yep.
Big part of your meeting. Big part.
Absolutely. He was my partner. He's almost 5. It's coming up on 5 years he's been gone. So Tim, did you get some of the answers you wanted?
Oh yeah, the check engine, the inner check engine light's been on for I think since the last time I signed on to this thing, and I never followed through. Procrastination's my middle name. So no, I'm gonna push myself, and you're gonna hear from me too. So
Okay, brother. I'm happy to be helpful anytime. And here's the thing. So I'll go back to the quick note about sponsorship real quick, or just working with others in general. You and I happen to attend a meeting where people talk about others all the time, right? That is not my style in Alcoholics Anonymous. When somebody tells me something, I take it to my grave, because it is not my place to judge. It's only my place to help, and it's my responsibility to keep another's confidentiality, but what I have learned. So if I go to a priest, yeah, he may say, do 14 Hail Marys and 10 Our Fathers and go on with life. But a sponsor or a guide in doing this work knows where to take me in the book next to help me move forward with the rest of the process of sobriety, and that's important. In chapter 5, while it presents all of the steps to us, it tells us only how to do 2 things. how to take step 3 and how to take step 4. It gives us the prayers we'll use, the actions we'll take, and it shows us the promises of that. When we get to chapter 6, into action, it's only 16 pages long, yet it takes us through 7 steps in that 16 pages. And that's really how simple it all is. You ever hear anybody say in a meeting, I turned it over today? And I'm like, really? What'd you turn over? I don't know, but I turned it over. Right? Well, how'd you turn it over? Well, I just said, here, God, take it. So here's the thing. I make the decision in step 3, but how do I implement the decision? Because I until I do step 4, I don't know what my will in my life has really been, right? So the process of steps 4 and 5, the discovery process, shows me what my will in my life has been. It is the process of 6 and 7 that help me give it to God so that he can take it. So it's a 5-step process. I call it the cycle of 5. 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Teach me what my will in my life has been and teach me how to turn it over to God. That is a beautiful, amazing thing. Oh, it's a simple process. Sean, you made it through it. I'm glad. We're glad to have you here, brother.
Yeah, this was great. Scott was saying it was a God shot because we started step 4 today, and then Tim texts me, if anyone's interested, I'm hopping on this call. And what time? It was great, because there was just areas where I was maybe making a cop out, or I was overestimating what some of the things, what some of these experiences were. So it definitely helped put it in perspective and got me on the right path on what to focus on. So this is awesome.
Wonderful. Grateful to have you. So again, when we send the pages out, there's 13 example pages that all have the examples and show you the 7 areas of self and all that. And then the ones you can print off for yourself, you can print an unlimited amount that you need so that you can do the work. And it still has, God, please show me this, so on and so forth at the top. But the questions are there, and you just fill in the blanks in between in your own words. And that is the best way I know to get to the truth. And if you don't know where to start in a 4-step, I'll throw this out there. Because many of us think it needs to start with mom and dad. Yeah, sometimes it does. But I'll start with this. Who are you most pissed off at right now? That's where you start.
That's great. Yeah. It's funny you say that because, that was something got to me today. And that was the first, it wasn't even the person, it was it was a situation, but nonetheless, it was fresh in the mind. And it was like, this is an obstacle right now for me. So it's like it says in your background, put pen to paper.
Bam! Thanks for painting that on my wall, Trish.
You're welcome.
That's awesome. Great setup.
Yeah, it's a very interesting room. And some of these people have seen it in person, like Donald.
And believe it or not, I thought that was basically going to be on the back side of the house, not knowing that that's actually his living room, because that's what he does. He lives this program. Yeah, I found that out.
Love you, brother.
I love you too, brother.
Come
Thank
help
you so
come
much
help me
for
take
opening
some
up your
tents
house.
down. The tents are still up.
Still?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's either been
Every time we
raining
went
or
to
too
take 'em
hot.
down, it's raining.
I'll get them down this week. So, any other questions or thoughts, anybody? We're here again. You have our numbers, and we're happy to be helpful. Don't hesitate anytime to call. Allison, I'll see you at assembly, I'm assuming, but feel free to call and reach out anytime. And I don't think, Trish, did you post tomorrow night's meeting in the chat yet? Okay, so I know some of you have Tuesday night commitments and stuff, but we have what I believe, yes, I'm a little biased, but what I believe to be the greatest big book study on the planet. And it starts at the same time and it runs an hour and a half long too. So please feel free to come to it.
Awesome. Thanks all. I'll try to
It's
make
a
it.
good one. It's a good one, trust me.
Where are you guys at, Jamie?
In the book, that's a good question. Oh, guess what? We are in, I think last week we just finished step 11.
Oh yeah.
So
We are starting into action, I believe. Page 72.
there you go. There you go. Oh, yeah, so we are starting into action. Okay, so we haven't gotten there yet. I guess we just finished up step we just finished up step 4 then.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good.
No, well, the bride just came down.
Ah, well, happy birthday, girl.
That's Mr. Pickles. Yeah.
Hi, Linz. I hope it's been a great birthday.
She had to take the kids out to dinner by herself because I was so tired when I came home from work. I didn't want to go to swim class. I needed a little bit of rest. And so she went and got her free birthday dinner at some restaurant across from where they do their swim lessons. So,
Well,
right.
you know what, brother? If I was like you, working 35 stories up, having a leash to keep me from falling out of the building every day, I'd be tired too.
Yeah, I'm on solid ground. I'm inside of like a first floor outdoor mall, but it's brutal conditions. No moving air, dust everywhere. Have to wear a mask just to not be blowing plaster out of my nostrils for days on end. So,
Oh, I hate that.
well, the thing is like I learned in my safety classes years ago that this, the dust that's in the drywall, silica dust,
Mm-hmm.
that's the new asbestos.
Yeah.
It's just as bad.